Hello, and thank you for joining us for Get Good with Articulate Storyline, brought to you by San Diego ATD and ISPI SoCal. I'm John Morley, an instructional design consultant, and if I can help you with the project, my email address is in the chat window. No one knows everything about Storyline, especially me. So this evening, we are very fortunate to have with us Yvonne Urra-Brazain. Her work has been informed by experience in problem solving for state agencies, medical companies, sales groups, and a decade of instructional and curriculum design experience as a K through 6 educator. And if she is brave enough to put up with sixth graders, she is tough enough for us, I believe. She is a recognized accessibility expert. She serves as an industry presenter for virtual and in-person conferences, including Articuland. She is a monthly facilitator of the Accessibility Collab hosted by the Global Learning and Development Community. And she's a published author. She's contributed 5 chapters to the edited volume Design for All Learners, Create Accessible and Inclusive Learning Experience. This is published by ATD Press and was shortlisted for the Get Abstract 2025 International Book Award for the category of Learning Impact. So with that, thank you very much for joining us, Yvonne. And what you got for us?
It's my absolute pleasure to be here, and I am really enjoying that we have a nice, intimate group. Today I'll be sharing really some quick ways, and accessibility is never quick for me, and I think for Joe, who I just saw had logged on a little bit earlier. Joe's an accessibility expert as well, so I'm very excited to have Joe here joining us. Accessibility is never quick for me to do in my day-to-day job, but there have been new tools and features that Articulate has brought out in Storyline that have made that process a lot more streamlined for me and for my team. So I'm going to share some of those ways and methods that I've learned to make accessibility a little easier, a little more part of our front end process rather than something that is bolted on at the end of a workflow. And I have a link to my Storyline file for you if you would like to build along. I call it a build along file because it's not perfect. It's not set in stone. There are errors throughout the file, but we get to play in it. It's also something you can take away and refer to later in case you want to refresh your memory, or as new features come out and you want to compare the differences between what we might cover today and what might be new. I find that I do that more often than I would like to admit, since things keep changing and it's been difficult to stay abreast, especially with AI and all of these new tools coming out. I will share my screen so we can be on the same page together. This is the file, and our topic is making it accessible. We'll be covering 3 overarching topics under our big theme. And the first is how to use some of these somewhat new features to Storyline by just creating a whole new project. It solves 5 accessibility issues off the bat by going to File and New. And let's see, here we are. The first 2 accessibility topics or problems that the new project code has fixed is that the untitled scene is no longer untitled. It is preset to intro scene. And the untitled slide is no longer set to untitled as well. It's also intro scene. And one reason why this makes sense for accessibility is we want to ensure that all of our scenes and slides are meaningfully titled, just like you would want in an outline of a document. We want our scenes and our slide titles to be unique and to explain very briefly what that slide or scene is about. So Articulate has made it preset for us, helping us check off that on their accessibility checker, which we'll look at quite a bit today as well. Some other things that are preset by going to File and New Project. And I forgot to mention, this is if you've updated your Articulate app since I believe it was either March or May of 2025. So if you've stayed updated with your Storyline application, this should already be preset for you when you go to File, New Project, or New. In the player properties, and I'll have to pull that from my other screen, there are two other areas that have been preset for accessibility, and that's that the player controls option to play and pause has been pre-checked. That allows any user to control if audio or media is playing on autoplay. Accessibility standards say that they should have control over when something should start and stop. The other thing that's pre-checked is I might be saying it incorrectly, but I believe it was also playback speed, so that it's another control here for users to, if they need to slow something down, they have that already in their player properties. And once the Storyline file is published to Review 360 or elsewhere, or they could speed it up because some people prefer going through information a little quicker, especially if they're reviewing. So those two things are accessibility item 3 and 4 that's preset for us now when we select a new project. And the final thing is our text is now upgraded for new projects. This is now pre-selected, whereas before this was an option a few years ago, I believe. I played with it a few years ago, but I didn't know where to go reliably to check it or uncheck it, or select it or unselect it. And now it's baked in to a new project. So 5 accessibility checklist items that have been solved by Articulate themselves.
And where again do you pull up these the options that we just saw?
Oh, certainly. On the File menu,
Right.
at the very bottom, we have Storyline options.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
And the text options are on the Feature tab under the text heading, where it says there's the checkbox to use upgraded text for new projects.
Okay, so that's not selected by default, you're saying. You have to select that yourself.
In previous versions of Storyline, or if you're using legacy files, even in the new version of Storyline, this may not have been selected.
Okay, thank you.
So my recommendation has been, because there have been new things happening, if you have the opportunity to start a fresh file for a project, and if accessibility is something that these accessibility items you would like to have baked in from the beginning. Let's say you're starting a new project or new template. Going into File, New Project is a really quick and easy way to use built-in features rather than remembering all of these 5 places to check. I know sometimes with our legacy files, that's not always a luxury we have. So thankfully, the accessibility checker that Articulate brought out last year as well, and I'm pulling it from my other window, will check for some of those issues. Play pause button enabled. If it wasn't enabled, then it will give you an alert and say, oh, we need to check for this, and it'll give us options to fix it. So as we go through our file today, we're going to alter some things if you're building along, or as you're watching me or listening to me build. There will be opportunities for us to see how we can use and leverage the accessibility checker now built into the tool to check for our work. As a caveat, and there's an important note at the bottom, the accessibility checker is a starting point. So if you're interested in building more accessibly from the start, this is an excellent starting tool. Would it meet federal audits or state audits? My short answer would be no. There's a lot of manual testing that needs to be done to meet more rigorous standards. And there are things that an automated tool just can't assess that a human would be a better assessor of. And we'll also talk about some of those stipulations as we go along. I'm going to return to my file so that we can take a look at some of these objects or items. So if you're following along, I included a video of the steps I went through for your future reference if you do need it. For those 5 things that are solved. Oh, I noticed my failure properties changed. There's also some text in the notes panel. So I'm going to do something a little different and hope that it works while I'm on camera. There we go. I just adjusted the player properties. For some reason, it defaulted to dark and I had set it for light with black text. So I reset it just now. Some of the information I shared in demonstration is in the notes panel for slide 2.2. The big part of our discussion today, when it comes to accessibility, I have trouble because I think of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, known as WCAG, or I say WCAG standards. And for Section 508 conformance or compliance, which is the US government's standard for accessibility and accessible information and communication content or information technology content. There are over 50 standards to look at when conducting an audit. So for our purposes of how we can use built-in tools to efficiently make things more accessible for more people, we're going to look at 6 of the top 6 accessibility considerations listed by Articulate themselves. And their top 6 considerations, I'm going to make this a little larger for us since this is kind of what we're focusing on. There we go. And the top text item here is a link to the article posted by Articulate. It's a RISE course. So it's a web-based course that you can go through that's free and accessible for people with access to RISE or Review 360. The first thing they say is to make all text size 12 or larger. The second thing is to be mindful of color contrast. So that means if 2 colors are put together or side by side, are they still readable by most people or as many people as possible? That all buttons or interactive elements, some people say clickable or selectable objects. So either it's a hotspot or sometimes shapes that serve as web links or buttons that lead you somewhere else, that they be at least 44 pixels by 44 pixels. And we're going to take a look and play around with that as well. That there is a text alternative or alternative text for visual elements, specifically in this case, images, and that we have a text alternative for images that are informative and not necessary for images that are merely decorative. So if there's a swooping, beautiful green gradient in the background, but it doesn't bring any value to the learning, we would not want to write an alt text for a learner to describe how beautiful the green gradient is, because it's irrelevant to what they need to know. If it were relevant to the topic, such as maybe creative writing, then we would use that alt text to describe that image as an example of creative writing. But if it really is decorative and just there for looks, that's not something we typically need alt text for. The fifth item they list is closed captions and transcripts. This is specific to audio and video or synchronized media, which is audio, video, and sometimes interaction together. So a storyline file is considered synchronized media to web accessibility standards. But video itself with audio would also be considered synchronized media, which requires closed captions. Otherwise, our accessibility standards require transcripts for anything that's audio based, like a podcast. And finally, their sixth big item is to customize focus order.
And I
Before
believe
I,
I
Mhm.
believe Joe's going to come back and talk with us about focus order. Is that true, Joe?
Yeah, that'll be part of it, and then playing with a screen reader just to see what it says.
Excellent.
Oh, I love
Okay.
it. Excellent. So I'm going to just go over the basics of that tool today. But these six things, I think we'll be able to see some built-in tools that might make it a little more efficient for you and maybe your team if you build with a team. So the first one, text size, I wanted to dive a little deeper to instead of just focusing on text size, because that seems like something we can very easily maybe change in a file. But when you have 100 slides in the legacy file, and yes, and it varies by typeface. When you have 100 slides in a legacy file, sometimes adjusting text size across the file can seem really daunting. So one place I go to, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, is the design tab. And before we go to that design tab though, um, there's a place in your design tab where you can set your fonts for the course. And like Anna had said, readability also varies by typeface. So it goes beyond the size of the text, but also how web readable it is. Because most people, I think, are looking at storyline outputs online. They're not necessarily having a way to print it and read it. So we want to use fonts and typefaces that are web friendly. On the bottom here, I've included a link to Figma's top 25 best fonts for websites. Figma's becoming a big name for UX designers, so I thought it would be an interesting place to pull some of their information from. And later in our conversation, as time allows, I'll pull some of these links out and put them in the chat for those of us who do not have access to the storyline file. But Figma does tend to gravitate toward sans serif fonts. So fonts without tails, like Times New Roman is one of those great print-friendly fonts with tails on the ends of the I forget what they're called. I guess the end parts of the glyphs, there are tails, there are serifs. Whereas this font I chose is Open Sans, sans being without. So size and readability matter. If you go into your design tab, this is where I start all of my templates is in the design tab. This is where I set my slide size and then my colors, but in this case, my fonts. And Articulate has fonts set up here. Some of them are already very web friendly. Articulate has their own font, and I chose Open Sans and Open Sans. It's also listed on the Figma's list of great fonts for websites. When you use Rise, they already have a lot of those web-based fonts that are sans serif that are recommended even on the Figma list. Like I don't know how to pronounce them all very well, but I think it's Roboto or Roboto maybe, or Montserrat, or all the fonts that I don't know how to pronounce, basically. But if you are creating fonts for a specific need, and I'm currently on my personal version of Storyline, you can create a new theme font and select your heading font and your body font and give it a name so you can track for which client or for what purpose you use these particular fonts. Something to know about the fonts is it presets things for you. So whatever you select as your heading font will be your default for your slide titles. And in this case, this is my slide title placeholder from my slide master. Any question text, so the questions you have in knowledge checks, that question box, that place marker will be in your heading font. And marker titles. So whenever you insert a marker here, when you have the text box that pulls up next to that marker, if you have a caption or a text box that pulls up, the title on the top will be defaulted to your heading font, whatever heading font you set here. Your body font is going to be defaulted for text, your text content placeholders, any text you type on shapes, captions, buttons, answer choices, marker descriptions. And this seems like such a simple thing, but for our team, that was an aha moment when we realized instead of going slide by slide and changing a font when a client said, oh, we redid our branding, we're no longer using this font, we're moving to this web-friendly font. We didn't have to go through the entire file and change every text box or every element on the slide. There were tools we could use, and one of those big tools that was built in was the font selection. Another one that's not listed here on our list, but if you need it sometime, because I know I do, is on the Home tab, on the paragraph section of the ribbon. There's a Find and Replace button, and it includes replacing fonts. So if you have some fonts that you don't have compatible in other systems or are from legacy files that you need to update, you can use this handy feature to replace one font with another. That comes with its own issues sometimes because sometimes things move around on you when you do that, but it's a handy thing to have if you need it.
Oh, that is hugely helpful.
Oh, yes, it's helped us quite a bit. And I could go on about how that's helped, but I know there's more for us to see.
Yeah.
The next big thing regarding text and size or readability is leveraging the text styles button. And this is on your home tab on the font section of the ribbon. Right now it's not enabled because I don't have a text box or text element. But when I select into a text element, I have access to my text styles. And text styles, like in Word, if you use Word or another word processing tool, helps to create a hierarchy or a document outline, but in Storyline or in your presentation. This helps me not only preset what my normal text should be, but it also helps me preset what items are a heading and what level of heading it is. So this slide is something I'm giving to you. It's something I use with my team where I remind them heading text styles are important. Here are the headings for this template. Here's an example of the headings and the hyperlink text. And here's some of the details. So whenever we create a new template, this slide comes along with me and I update it for the team so they have a reference point. And this becomes very important. It's one of those things that is missed often in accessibility, is ensuring that your headings are truly headings and that your body text or your content is truly body text or normal text. So if there's two things we can notice when I select into text. So here, the text style is set to normal, but if you also notice, it's set to my body text, the default body text. There's the heading and the body, and it's open sans and open sans. In hindsight, I probably should have changed those so we could see a difference, but body text here for our normal text. When I select into the heading text, oh, it should say heading. My apologies. So I should set that to my heading text, and it's already preset to headings. When I change out this slide for other templates, the fact that I set this to heading 1 carries over. So if I insert a new theme file, it will inherit the properties of heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, and hyperlink. And that becomes such a time saver when we're switching from clients or repurposing slides for a new client or a new purpose. Just another quick insert there for you. There's some extra information in the notes panel that we might not have time to go over right now, but I will. It's there for you if you're interested in additional information about how to nest very lightly heading text. So those are two things we can use in the design tab.
But before you get off the styles, they are such a best practice that talk a little bit about the ability to add your own styles.
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. And I deleted all my own styles for this example, but let's say previously I had a little note here, and the note was slightly different than the regular body copy that I had. So let me see if I can. So I'm going to just add a note here, and I'll pull this text up.
Styles are so handy. It's the best practice to create your own styles, and there's really no argument for not having the style applied to everything in your project, because that makes it easy to go ahead and do a global search and replace if something needs text needs to be larger, smaller, different color, or whatever.
Exactly. Um, I'm doing something I typically wouldn't do, but for the sake of example, remember when we looked at our storyline options, we went to File, Storyline Options, Features tab, and we looked at upgraded text. Because I inserted a new text box, you'll notice the bounding marching line box and this icon to the right. In legacy versions of my storyline files, I never would see this because I didn't have upgraded text selected. But it's asking me if I want to toggle to auto fit to a fixed size. When I go into my format shape and text box options, my auto fits are different than what they used to be. So now I can choose between expand width, expand height, or fixed size, and overflow handling, automatically adding scroll bars, or allowing the text to overflow. Before, and for some reason, I can't remember what it used to say, even though I would talk about it every day at work. The settings were different before we had upgrade text. Does anyone remember what those settings used to say?
I don't believe there was the option. It just kind of expanded it uh, diagonally.
Right. And it would say like, do not fit or do not auto fit. There were, I think, 4 options before here. And our team would go back and forth about which options were the best. But now the text box is, I think, more fluid. Sometimes I have trouble with it because I don't expect the scroll bar to show, but it lets me know that I might need to change my size or my spacing for my text. So in this case, my normal body text was 30-point font, and I adjusted it to fit my bounding box by changing it to 24. So now I can add a new style, and I'm going to publish it as normal text because I want this text to be like body copy. I don't want it to be in an outline like a heading. So if it's not a heading leading someone toward a new topic, then I typically tell my team and myself that it's based on normal text. And I can give it a name. So I might say note. And now whenever I want to apply note, oops, because I added that bold there, it's going to automatically apply bold. I'll try to not make that bold and then, oh, I sometimes have trouble with this, especially when I'm presenting, but you can select the text and I'm going to go ahead and do a backward update style from selection. So I selected the expansion arrow and then on my menu options, update style from selection. So it will change every text box that I've selected as note to whatever update I just made. So it'll go through the file, look for everything labeled as note, and update it. This is so handy, such a time saver. And it took me several years to learn that that was an option I had.
Yeah, especially if you have dozens or even hundreds of slides. You did this in one fell swoop rather than hours of fun going to every single slide.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that we can create our own custom textiles, John. Thank you. Well, that's what we can do. Some of the expansions on text, making text size large. I feel like text is such a big part of our publications and e-learning. There were some other features built into Storyline that we could focus on. I'll say for this slide, in the build along section, this is your opportunity to go through those same steps. If you'd like to test going through the design tab and the fonts and testing out right in front of your eyes, you could hover over a font grouping or pairing and decide if that would work for your project, or if you create a new font and then align it to a certain project. That's something you can play with right now as I'm going through it myself. Or you could also try, if you have the a storyline file open or this storyline file open, trying out the text styles and making adjustments to them. Sometimes they can be tricky. I have trouble with them. And if I'm having trouble applying a style or updating a style, one tip I do have that sometimes works for me. Let's say I want this to be heading 2, but I really actually don't want it to be heading 2. Sometimes when I hover over heading 2, it will already set it. I think my mouse is just really sensitive. And if it does that, I found I have to reset the style and just select the style again, and it resets it how I want it to be, as a quick tip. I don't know about you, but this particular font is not readable for me. It would not be my personal preference. I found fonts that other people find extremely readable, and they are not for me. So I typically shy away from decorative fonts when it comes to having informative content. I keep it as simple as possible and hopefully as large as the space allows. And if not, we try to we try to break it up and separate the content out so there's more space for thinking and design and the content itself. And I think it's funny. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's in English to me as well. Now I'm going to move on to these next 2 slides about colors. Color contrast, I think, is so fascinating. But I want to just highlight some of the tools that are built into Storyline, and also this slide that I developed really just based on what Storyline already was showing me to level set visually for myself what the theme colors are in a file. So I'm going to see if I can, well, if it'll give me my scroll bar back while I'm sharing. Oh, looks like I'm just going to move our share button over a little bit. What this is a depiction of our theme color pop-up when we go to the design tab. And if you'd like to build along with me, I'm going to the design tab and then the colors drop-down option. This project I named ATD San Diego, but the color theme, quite honestly, was not set for ATD. It was just something I did for demonstration purposes. Oops, I'm going to go back. I clicked out on accident or selected out. If you go to create new theme colors, you'll get this pop-up window or dialog box. It says theme colors. You can add a custom name. So I'm going to say ATD again. And this is where you can set the colors that will show up in all of your palette windows by default for your project. So this is a great place to set an accessible color palette from the get-go. So as I mentioned earlier, whenever I start a file, I start in the design tab. I start with the slide file size, the resolution, and then I go to colors, and then I go to fonts. Articulates list was a little backward from my normal process. But what I've done with this slide, and this is another reproducible slide I use for myself and my team, I recreated how Storyline is demonstrating the colors layered or paired together. So this dark 2 color that we selected in this box is the background for a possible slide background you can choose from your design tab as well. And light 2 is a possible design for background color in your design tab. All of the colors that are marked accent 1 to accent 6 are demonstrated in the bar graph from accent 1 to accent 6. And there are special defaults for certain colors. Accent 1 is a very powerful color. I recommend that your main brand color for your client or your project be represented in accent 1 because it's a default color for shapes, for your call out boxes or speech bubbles, for your table header row. It's set as the default. So it makes it easier if you know what your default color will be in that selection. It's easier for me at least. And then you get to see or visualize how all the colors you select in your palette will work together. Will work together on your alternative background colors, especially because light 1 and dark 2 are usually preset to white and black for highest potential contrast. But these ones that you may select to be different if you do choose to make them. You could make even light 1 and dark 1 different as well. But these are demonstrated on the side in your dialog box. The other colors that you set are your control color. And control it'll be on our next slide, is really the hover color for when you have radio button or checkbox options. So they demonstrated here by the word control, and there's a very faint color that this color I selected here, kind of a light tan. That's that hover color that's defaulted for my user inputs or user control options. The quiz correct and quiz incorrect colors are depicted here as well as the dark green and the dark red side by side. Those show up on your slide master for the feedback masters. under the accessible quiz correct and quiz incorrect masters. So whenever you use a default like correct, when you answer a question and the default feedback layer says correct, it will use this dark green for the checkbox icon and this dark red for the X icon. So that's what those two colors are for. And the last two colors are our custom colors. Custom one specifically is used for markers and for buttons. It's the default color for both markers and buttons. And for the life of me, I can't remember what custom 2 is. I think I have it in my notes. So I'm going to click out real quick and draw your attention to the notes panel where I have extra information, some background information about how theme colors work, as well as some of those items I just discussed. Let's see, custom 2 is the default color for checkbox styles 3 and 4. Okay, so it was kind of a little different. It's the hover color for drag items, drop-down questions, and Likert scale questions, which I think is sometimes handy to know if you do a lot of those sort of interactions. A cool thing about this slide is that if you change your theme colors, the colors here, because they are set using the theme color palette, it will also update on the slide. And it blew my mind when I learned this was how it worked, because I didn't realize it at first until several years ago. But this made communicating the color palette for a project with a team so much easier. And when I would update palettes, I would drop the slide in, see how all the colors work. And when I update the color, it would visually display for me on the slide instead of having to go back into my design tab, the colors tab, and then editing. And for some reason, I'm not seeing the edit option right now. Editing my colors here. But this is that second part that I use for my team where we see all the colors again, some of the labels, and 3 links to web contrast checkers that I use. I do like the accessible color matrix as well. It gives you, I think, 5 or 6 colors you can put on a palette, and then we'll create a matrix of how they pair together and which ones can lay on top of each other with adequate contrast. So those are some neat tools. And for my team as well, I put out the different checkbox styles and radio styles. I had forgotten that custom 2 operates or is dependent for the checkbox style 3. And if you're not familiar, the checkbox styles are referring to these rows of styles. So this is style 1, style 2, style 3, and style 4 that we have as default checkboxes. And all the colors, not all the colors, but many of the colors that we set on our palette are present as options. But the accent 1, custom 2, and dark 1 colors are used for the checkbox defaults for the check mark itself. And for radio buttons, it's accent 1 and custom 2. And let's see. So as a recap, if you were building along or would like to build along, you can leverage the design tab to set your colors up front. And you're more than welcome if you find reason or purpose to use my pre-built slides that I use to test colors and see how it worked together. And also remind myself what the defaults are in a template. The rest of these slides are sort of build along. So
and you are very generous to provide this storyline project here. It's has a lot of information that can be used after this presentation.
Oh, I do hope so. So here for our build along, I put an example of a default button. This button, when I go to my button tools format, thank you all for your well wishes. When I go to my format options, I set this button to have a width of 150 pixels and a height of 150 pixels. But if you'd like to, I'd like you to see how big a 44 by 44 pixel button might look like on your display. Pardon me. So I'm going to select button and draw a button out. If you're really talented, and I've never been good enough at it, you can use the numbers to kind of guide you. I always go back to my handy dandy text entry panel and put in the numbers. This is on my screen for this slide resolution, what a 44 by 44 pixel button would appear like.
Yeah, that's tiny.
It is. And if you notice, I now have 5 accessibility issues that popped up. So interestingly enough, one thing that's missing what's something missing from comparing the first button to this button here?
A label for one thing.
Absolutely, we are missing a label. Is there enough space for a label? I'm going to try to replicate my 44 by 44 label, and I'll change the color. Hopefully it'll be more visible. Label style appears different. Oh, we have a scrolling bar. I don't know how I could even access the scrolling bar. So 44 by 44 is a minimum requirement. It's not even the accessibility checker's minimum requirement. Let's take a look at what the accessibility checker says. If I delete that text, I'm going to recreate a situation where my issues come back. If you're building along with me, that's a great point, David had said. If you do have a small selectable area, like for a checkbox, you could put the label on the side, and that solves that issue for readability there. Oh, it's giving me an ad because I don't currently have an AI subscription on my personal storyline. I can select where it says 5 issues if you're new to the accessibility checker. And it's now using that red exclamation point to draw my attention to an issue. I can review the instance by selecting the review instance button. And it's now telling me, oh, you have this button. Would you like to give it alt text? And the reason it's asking for alt text is because we haven't entered a label on the button. So if you do remediate, like David had said, and put the text on the side, you could say, perhaps, depending on your audit, that this is a decorative object and you do not want the name of the button to be announced to assistive technologies like a screen reader or a refreshable braille display. Or let's see if I can get another issue going here. I'm going to add another button, and sometimes I play around and I just make the time go a little longer. So I'm going to not play too long. I'm going to go with 44 by 44 because there was another issue I wanted to highlight. And I'm not sure that I'll see it right here. I see, okay. In some of the documentation, and I don't see it listed here, the guidance about the size minimum is different in the accessibility checker than in WCAG, than in Articulate's article guidance. I would recommend, if you're ever curious, to use these handy links to go and see the actual text about the guidelines. And that is sometimes difficult to read, in my opinion, but it is a handy cornerstone, a source of truth, as it were, so that you can be, what's the word? informed about what the minimum requirement is. For our purposes and for Articulate's guidance right now, it's 44 by 44. My team likes to round it up to 50 by 50. That's our minimum. So check boxes, radio buttons, we try to keep 50 by 50. Some other questions here for you to consider that we might have talked about. What happens to the text space for a smaller button? What happened when we removed the text from the button? We got flagged for not having a label, and we can add a label as alt text as a remediation, or we could add a label on the side like David had said. I'm trying to keep up with our chat here so that, yes, we didn't have the accessibility checker as of, I think almost a year ago, we didn't have the accessibility checker, and it's made the guidance so much easier. It's streamlined a lot of processes for me and for my colleagues as well. It really has been an amazing ad. I agree. I'm going to demonstrate, David asked the question, if you clear all the accessibility checks, are there still things left over to verify? And my answer is always yes, unfortunately. And part of it is, I'll talk about it here on this slide, where in our build along here, we're looking at alternative text. Articulate's guidance was to add alternative text to informative images and hide decorative images. How does the accessibility checker know the author's intent of the image? That's my opening question. How will it know the author's intent of an image? So if I go into the alt text of this image, and if you're going into just one image, you can select or right click on the image and select accessibility. And it will give the alternative text that was set. Currently, this object is not visible to accessibility tools, so I can select it as accessible or not. And that means if I'm allowing a screen reader to read what I've written in the alt text, or if I'm saying it's decorative. So by unchecking it, I'm saying it's decorative. But here, is image illustration sufficient? It could be, depending on the use case, or it could not be. If we had talked about earlier, if information is in that image that someone needs to know in order to proceed, then we would want to represent an equivalence of that information in our alternative text. And one of my pet peeves is I get documents when I'm doing a remediation or an audit. I get documents where someone takes a screenshot of a slide that is full of text and says, this should work. And I'll say, well, if someone needs all the text on that image, I will need to either recreate it using text so someone can access that text, or we'll have to create alt text to restate all the text in the image if that text is for information. Sometimes, and I've done this before in a workshop where I had the same 3 images, but the text surrounding that same image had a different purpose. So the alt text for that image changed based on the reason the image was there. So always, when it comes to alternative text, I remind myself and my team, we go back to original intent. What is the intent of the visual? If the visual is meant to communicate information, what is the equivalent information? If it's something simple like a decorative image that really doesn't add to the conversation, then I would not make it readable to a screen reader, because the actual content should be readable if it's text-based and if we programmed it correctly. And one efficiency tip I have for alt text is to utilize the media library tab. It took me, again, years to find that I love the media library. It's accessible through the view tab and the media library button. But in one fell swoop, as soon as my media library loads, Hopefully it loads on my screen and not somewhere where I can't see it. Oh, it did. I get access to every image in my project and the how many uses of it, the alt text field, how many characters of alt text I used. So I can scroll through basically and check if I have adequate alt text and if I'm within the recommended alt text limit of 150 characters, give or take. And that seems kind of steep, but it's sometimes a powerful limit so that when someone takes a screen capture of text, and there's a reason to push back and say you're going to ask a screen reader to read all the text in this configuration in from an image from the alt text of the image. And screen readers may approach the alt text differently than you might intend if you're writing a document or creating a presentation in a certain way. So as brief as we can make it, and this is an image of text, so I represented all the text as best I could that I thought was informative. And I can decide if that should be read by a screen reader or not in the amount of instances that it's used.
Yeah, there's another question in the chat asking what is the ideal number? If 150 is too much, what would be the ideal number?
150 is the guidance I've heard as a maximum. I've had opportunities, I should say, or there were challenges where I definitely went over that character limit.
What would be the ideal number of characters? Do you have a feel for that?
Um, I think I think yes, there is an art in being succinct. And there's different camps. Depending on the image and what the image is meant to convey. Again, if you're doing a creative writing class and you have a beautiful green gradient, you might be verbose about the beautiful green gradient. Or if you want to elicit an emotional response, you might need a few more characters or a few more specific words, perhaps. It really gets boils down to what is the effect? What is the intent? And how close sometimes we put numbers around things for constraints so we can, work within certain constraints. And those constraints can be important. If you've ever opened up um, your email and maybe your company blocks images, you might see the alt text in place of the image because you might need to select a button to show all images. If you've ever had that experience, if the image is very small, the alt text will just run off and you won't get the information from it. So that is one reason why we want to keep alt text brief. Otherwise, I tend toward matching intent as closely as I can. And if needed, do I need to just put a caption instead? There are other ways for us to work around limitations. So sometimes captioning works for me as an alternative.
David's brought up an interesting issue concerning the media library, and that sometimes there can be things in the media library that are no longer used in the project. So, what do you do about that? You don't want to waste your time modifying things that are no longer being used. How can you avoid that?
Oh, sure. This is also a topic dear to my heart. I did a workshop on efficiency and file optimization. And something I found that our legacy files had were duplicate images. And I don't have one current. I had one earlier in this file and I deleted it before I shared it out. But I had duplicates of this image particularly. And my solution to that was to use the replace feature. And sometimes before I replace an image, I can use the jump to location button to take me to that specific slide where the image is used. And if I have another instance of that image, I can right select or right click, replace picture, and choose content library. Oh, no, choose media library. Oh, my apologies. It pulled into another. You can tell I use content library a lot. That was my immediate desire. Choose media library, and it will open up my media library in another window again. And from here, I would select the original. And I don't have a great example of that, but I would select the original image. And so here we see there's two instances of this image. So I can cycle between where those two instances are, but now I'm in a select field. So this is what I would want to replace the image with, but I'm going to say, let's replace with this one instead. It might mess things up a little bit for us, but there it is. So now I only have one instance of the question and three of this icon page layout image that is alt text layout icon. Yeah, so this is another way that when talking with our teams, we talk about optimization, having one version of an image and it resized for the shape that I already had in that space. It sometimes doesn't. And when it doesn't, we do round tripping. So we edit with, this is my personal laptop, so I don't have my industry tools. But if I had Photoshop, for example, I might edit the image in Photoshop or Illustrator and adjust the file size. So we web optimize using Photoshop, and then we bring the file back. So sometimes we have 8 MB PNGs that we whittled down so that we can bring our file size way down over time. But I love using the media library for so many reasons, and one of them is checking all my alt text really quickly. Instead of the other option is right-clicking accessibility and checking each object. But with the accessibility checker, it's made it now so that if I don't have alt text there, and if I haven't said that it's not readable, it will tell me as a flag like, hey, you have this image with no alt text. What do you want to do about it? And it's made it so much easier, so I don't have to hunt every item down. Another place you can check for your alt text is the focus order tab, which we'll look at later, and Joe will be doing a deep dive in, so I won't go over that too deeply today. And this, for the sake of time, we've covered images. And now the fifth one that Articulate mentioned was closed captions and transcripts. Something interesting I'd like to note. The accessibility checker says we have 0 accessibility issues. If we could confirm, does everyone else see 0? Because I'm seeing 0 across the
That
board
says
here.
0, all 6 boxes.
All right. But if you remember, I mentioned adding a video for your future reference on slide 2.2. This slide also has audio, but I was not flagged for not having closed captioning. That's interesting. And that's an example of manual checking and why it's important. An accessibility checker is great. It can get a lot of things, but it might not catch everything. And it might not have known that it should have caught this because my video has no audio. It was a screen recording, and I layered audio over it like a narration track in Storyline. So it might not have had the codec or the code to say, hey, this video has audio in it. It needs closed captioning. But I think it should have flagged me for having an audio track and saying, hey, you need captioning here. So there's different ways we can add captions. And the way that I like to use for work is AI helping me out. Because that has made it so much more efficient to have AI make a transcript for me, or to create a transcript in BTT format. But if you don't have that ability, you can right select or right click that object on the timeline. This is one way. Go to closed captions. You can generate, if you have the AI package, it'll give you its best alignment with what it perceives. You can manage, meaning you can go in and edit and change the closed captioning. Or if you have an outside file, let's say you did use AI to create a VTT format and you saved it out, or an SRT, different types of closed captioning files that you can import and export through media, you can import it here. If we go to manage, I'm going to be looking at the captioning opportunity for this audio file. So it gives me little boxes that I can type or copy and paste text into, and I can adjust the size. I can delete and adjust when that caption should end, when the next one should start, and what text should be present in it. And there's a lot I can say about captions and best or recommended practices for captioning and transcripts. But for our purposes, I just wanted to show you today where you can go to add in that text or other options you might have as well. Another place I go, and for some reason my storyline bar is looking a little funny for me. Probably a sign that I've been talking too much. My computer likes to do that. I also go to the media library as a quick way to assess, are there captions for my audio or for my video? And if not, it says I can add captions or import them from here. So if I'm doing a quick accessibility check, I just want to end my day and make sure I didn't miss anything, I go directly to the media library. I go through every tab and do a quick check of what I have currently in my file. And it's so much easier for me than how I used to do it, slide by slide. I'm gonna finish this up here really briefly with focus order. Where I go for focus order the most is the home tab, and it's on the slide portion of the ribbon. There's a button here that says focus order. I like to right click and add it to my quick access toolbar. Before I go on with focus order, I love my quick access toolbar. It has all sorts of things that I use day to day, and it was built from the very beginning when I first opened Storyline, because this is my personal version. So the order of my quick access toolbar is sort of in alignment with my order of discovering the tool. And you might notice my focus order button is pretty far back here because it's something I discovered way later in my process. But if you don't use a quick access toolbar, and I didn't highlight it here as a point, but I love it. And it's something I use all the time. My media library is also very far on my quick access toolbar. I wish there was a way to reorganize this. And if you know of a way, please let me know, because I use this all the time and I would love a quick way to reorder this. But and if you do, please do, either in the chat or aloud if you'd like. Let me know about reorganizing that quick access toolbar. And I'm going to bring along my focus order panel, and I'm going to try to reorganize my screen here. All right. So this slide is pretty basic. The timeline is showing heading 2, and I had labeled that. The heading 2 was 6 focus order. So if I adjust a little more here. Now, it's a little hard to see. One thing I don't like about having too many windows open at once, when I select that item, it will highlight it or outline it on the screen to verify with me what it's indicating, because it can be difficult to figure out what item is what, especially if you have 100 items on a slide. So that focus indicator is very helpful. And this is the other element it's going to read. So a screen reader will read this object first, heading 2, and then we'll read the build along text box. It will not read, because I told it not to, it will not read the logo, and it will not read this decorative image I added here. Just because it doesn't add anything additional to what the text already says. So these are the two items that are going to be in focus and in the order from top down in this tool in the focus order panel. If I feel like something's missing from the slide elements, I can select the plus sign and say, hey, you know what? Let's talk about picture one. Let's have the screen reader read picture one. It'll pre-populate with the alternative text I had set in the media library, but I can also edit it here. So the focus order is great for slide by slide, every element on a slide. What is a screen reader going to show? Something to note, and I hope this makes sense. It took me a while to understand that when someone is tab navigating or keyboard navigating a course, the keyboard will not show a focus indicator, like if you're in Review 360 or in an LMS, it will not show a focus indicator over every element. It will show in a real live course the focus order over selectable elements or interactive elements. So if there's a next button, there might be an indicator. If you have a button that leads to a branching scenario, that will have a focus indicator. There's other interactive elements on the slide, or if there's a specific diagram or image, it sometimes will put a focus indicator around that. So that in a nutshell is focus order. I had mentioned earlier, text alternatives are important for many people, especially people who use screen readers or who may use refreshable braille displays, because the assistive technology, or AT, can take the text and represent it for people in ways they need, either through audio, like a screen reader does, or through raised braille on a special keyboard, where it'll take the text information programmatically, it's programmatically determined text, and will actually create the braille as they go along. So there are many people who benefit from offering alternatives to visual information or audio information, and text is the best way I can think of at this time for creating an alternative everyone can experience. And that's the top 6 considerations. If you have any additional questions or things to discuss, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for your time and your engagement.
And Joe, for more information on the order and the reader, Joe is coming back in April to continue this discussion. Thank you very much for being so generous with both your time and sharing the storyline
My
file
pleasure.
with everybody. Thank you again very much, and thanks to the rest of you for joining us this evening. A good night.
Good night.
All right. Thanks all. Have a good night. We'll see you
Good
next.
night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for your involvement.